Hey folks, how you doing? My name is Stanley Fritz. I am the New York State Political Director at Citizen Action of New York, and welcome to the 2020 Election Day Show. I am really excited to be here with all of you and talk about the federal election with President Trump, the U.S. Senate seats, and races we should be looking out for, and of course, what's happening at the local level with our statewide races. I am joined by my good friend and partner in crime on our weekly podcast called BeHeard Talk, Selena Hill. Selena, let the folks know who you are.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for that introduction, Stanley. Yes, like Stanley said, my name is Selena Hill. I'm a multimedia journalist. I'm currently the digital editor at Black Enterprise, where I cover stories in race, politics, and culture and entrepreneurship. And also the founder of BeHeard Talk. As Stanley just mentioned, BeHeard Talk is a weekly talk show that covers also race, politics, and culture, but we mix it up. We add a bit of trap music, Asada Shakur, and Beyonce. So we have these really cool, unfiltered conversations, and we'll do that all from a Black millennial perspective. And you can check it out every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern, streaming across BeHeard Talk's streaming platforms. But yes, and speaking of BeHeard Talk, we are super excited to be partnering tonight with Citizen Action New York to cover the 2020 election. We know this night it's going to be a long one. There's a lot to cover. There's a lot to talk about. And we want to definitely break down how this race is going to impact all of us who are here, especially in New York City and New York State.
Yes, Lynn, thank you so much for that. We got a long night ahead of us. We'll be with you for at least an hour. So if you want to come over here and have a conversation with us, please do. Leave comments on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, SconeX, wherever you use your socials. Make sure you leave us comments. Selena, it's election day. It's 9:02 p.m. Eastern. The polls have literally just closed in New York State. Did you vote?
Yes, of course I voted. I actually voted early for the first time. So I did early voting. It's my understanding that New York never had the opportunity to vote early for a presidential election until 2020. And obviously the pandemic has caused havoc in our state, especially. So I was really happy to have that ability to vote early. It definitely was a burden of relief, but in turn, I feel like so many of us voted early. I think 1.1 million New Yorkers took advantage of this opportunity to vote early. And across the state and across the city, the lines weren't as long as I was expecting. So, New Yorkers definitely showed out. I actually voted on the Working Families Party for the first time ever, which I know we'll talk about later because we have the New York State Director who's going to be speaking with us today. So, yeah, of course I voted. And I just want to say that it is official. Joe Biden has won in New York. That was announced by Politico about 1 or 2 minutes ago. He has definitely won. But, I mean, of course, we knew that.
Yeah, so I'm not surprised he won, but I'm happy to announce it. Selena, you said the lines weren't that long for you. I tried to vote 3 times early before I could finally early vote on Sunday. When did you go do it?
Yeah, no, to clarify, the lines weren't that long today on election day because so many of us took advantage of the opportunity to actually go out and vote early. I voted early on Sunday. I know my mom, she went out, she voted early the first day that New Yorkers had that opportunity, and she said she waited online for 3 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. So like you, Stanley, I know you had to keep going back and back. When I voted the last day in comparison, and I waited online for about 20 minutes. And, I have friends who voted for the first time ever. And they said they went today and the lines were not that long.
Yeah, well, first of all, shout out to groups like Citizen Action, Common Cause, Let New York Vote, and everyone else who fought for the great democracy laws we got passed in 2018, which included early voting. Shout out to New York State Senator Zelnor Myrie, the elections chair in the state Senate, who helped to champion all of this. It's because of that Democratic Senate that we got in 2018 that New Yorkers are able to vote early in 2020. And that's a part of the work that we do at Citizen Action of New York. We're always trying to make sure that the government runs good, so we have good government, so that regular folks can build power for the issues and the policies that we need to succeed. So yeah, this is the first time we've had early voting in a presidential election. It was super clutch. Could you imagine what it would look like if there was no early voting and we all had to go today, Selena?
It would look like 2012 or 2008 when I waited in line for hours to vote for Barack Obama. That's how it would have looked today. And the bad thing about it would have been the pandemic. We don't want people to be waiting in large groups anywhere together during this time. So Stanley, the work that you've done in citizen action and the state senators and legislators that you just mentioned was, like you said, it was so clutch.
Yeah, man. Listen, you don't think about it in time. You think about what it could do, but you don't actually think about how it's going to impact you. But here we are now on Election Day, November 3rd, or the end game, as I like to call it. And, the polls were still pretty packed today, but they weren't as bad as they were last week. And that's because folks had an opportunity to early vote. I want to take a second to just look at some of the comments that we have over there. I see that Naquan voted, Christina Sparrow voted, and Christina voted on the Working Families Party line. You love to see it. Christina Sparrow, for those of you who are wondering, is a member of Citizen Action New York. She's a part of our New York City chapter, and she's a state board member. So shout out to Christina. Selena, how do you think tonight's going to go? What are your guesses right now?
I honestly, the only thing that I'm pretty sure about is no matter what the results say and what the ballots, how they turn out, Donald Trump is going to try to steal the election. Like, we already know the voter suppression tactics that are going on in Pennsylvania right now. He said, I have lawyers on standby ready to fight so that all of the votes are not counted on an extended amount of time. He wants to just basically, the Republican strategy is just counting on the votes that came in on Election Day, because we know that Democrats outpaced Republicans when it came to voting early and mailing in ballots. So that's so the Republican strategy is pretty much suppress the vote. That's the only way to win. And Donald Trump has been very vocal and outspoken about that, which, it's horrible. Like, he does not care about democracy.
He really doesn't at all. And listen, we worked really hard here in New York State to make sure every vote counted and everyone got a chance to vote. I want to take a quick second to shout out the organizers, the members, the leaders, and just everyone at Citizen Action who has done amazing work. In just the last 2 weeks of this election, we sent out over 20,000 text messages to people encouraging them to vote. And we also made over 25,000 phone calls to people pushing them to vote, and not just to vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, but to do it on a Working Families Party line. Mm-hmm. That work couldn't have happened without great people like our organizer in the Capital District, Karen, our organizers, Gabe, Mercedes in Rochester, Christian in Buffalo, Mary and Amber in Binghamton, and just the amazing team that we have here. So, folks, I want to bring, we have a guest on air. I want to bring her on because if you're into Citizen Action, you know her very well. I know her very well. She's my boss, but she's also the co-executive director of Citizen Action of New York. I want to introduce our co-ED, Jessica Wisniewski.
Hey, Jessica.
Hey, good to meet you, Selena.
Nice to meet you as well.
Jess, where have you been doing?
What?
What have you been doing? You got the Citizen Action meeting. Where have you been?
I have just gotten home from palm carding in New Paltz at the Busy Pole site in southern Ulster County. So yeah, I'm getting warmed up. I'm eating some hot soup, and I'm settling in to spend my first election night in many years with my real family instead of my Citizen Action family. So thank you for having me, so I could get some Citizen Action family love tonight too.
No problem, Jess. Thanks for being on here. Listen, this election is very important. We're talking about the presidential race. We're talking about U.S. Senate, U.S. Congress, but we're also talking about statewide races. What's the most important race in your mind, and how will Citizen Action respond if Trump wins at the top of the ticket?
I mean, no doubt in my mind that the most important race to watch is the presidential, of course, because it just, there's so much deep impact and so much incredible harm that's been caused in the past 4 years from so many people in our community. I mean, really everybody has felt, right? In sometimes very violent and visceral terms, and in others in ways in which it just really disrupts their lives, losing healthcare coverage. I mean, the list, how the response to COVID has been handled. So anyway, Joe Biden was certainly not my first choice, but he's my first choice tonight. And it's on the WFP line. And it's so we can have a president that we can push to do the right thing, which I think we can with Joe Biden, actually have campaigns that push him to go the direction we need him to go. And I think that one of the next things I'm really watching is the U.S. Senate, right? Because if the U.S. Senate flips, New York State becomes a vital state in America. Chuck Schumer becomes the Senate Majority Leader. And we have a job to do in New York to make sure Chuck Schumer does the right thing on every single issue that matters to us. We have a lot of harm to repair early on in this potential new dynamic, knock on wood, if things go our way tonight. But we have to make leaps and bounds in progress in this country over the next 2 years and set it up so it's the next 4 years of hopefully triple Democrats, right, with the president, U.S. House, and Congress. And thanks to groups like the Working Families Party and so many of us, there are so many new progressive allies in the halls of power in Washington. New York's whole congressional delegation becomes a vital player in how politics plays out across our country, with strong progressives like AOC and Jamal Bowman. But even, some of the more moderate Democrats in upstate New York become vital players, where groups like Citizen Action have a base of power that's growing. So I don't know, everything's important to me tonight, because the state Senate races in New York are also critical to building the supermajority in New York State that we need, especially if, God forbid, we lose at the federal level. New York and our ability to just keep moving forward a solidly progressive agenda, in spite of centrist corporate Democrats like Andrew Cuomo, becomes really critical to our communities where our members live.
Jessica, I have a question for you. Can you talk more about some of the local races that you're watching and are particularly invested, particularly what is going on in Staten Island? I've been reading about how I know there's an extremely tight race there going on and between, I think it's like the southern part of Brooklyn and Staten Island, which is the most conservative part of New York City. Can you talk about that race in particular?
I don't know if I can. I think Stanley might need to talk about that, since he follows New York City. I'm the upstate gal.
Yeah, so the Staten Island race between Max Rose and Nicole Malliotakis is probably going to go down a line. But at least at the moment, it looks like Staten Island might side with Nicole Malliotakis. And the funny thing is that Max Rose might lose the race because he went to a peaceful protest, as they say on CNN, to support Black lives. And now there's huge backlash around that. Now, for those of you who live in New York City, you know that Staten Island, the second name for Staten Island is called NYPD land, because most of the cops live there. They don't live in Staten Island, they live in Westchester. So it really isn't much of a surprise that Nicole has that much support. But there's a strong Democratic organizing space here, and we got to make sure we're supporting it, because, listen, Staten Island can shift over and be blue the way that it needs to, but we got to keep doing the work and we got to keep doing the organizing. So those of you who are in Staten Island, keep on fighting, keep on doing the work, and we'll make sure that we keep on supporting you as well. So, but let's talk about some of the other races that are happening right now. So one of the races that we're really excited about at Citizen Action is Sam Brook versus Christopher M. Missick. And while we're still waiting for the Board of Elections to give us an update about how that race is looking, but it's a race that's very important to us, because if Summer wins in the Senate, Jeremy Cooney wins in his Senate race, and a few of our other Senate candidates beat Republicans, we will have a supermajority in the New York State Senate. And if you can do that, you can pass veto-proof bills, which means the governor cannot threaten to veto your bill because he does not like it. That would be a big deal. So let's talk about some of those races right now. With 1% of the vote coming in, Michelle Hinchy is down to Rich Amador by 1% in a 46 Senate district. Kimberly Davis, who's running on the Democratic and the Working Families Party line, there's no results for her race against Daniel Steck just yet, but as soon as we get it, we'll let you know. And Neil Breslin, this is funny, with 0% of the votes in yet, is up 70% against the Republican David Ewell. They really, really, really like Neil Breslin over there. In the Assembly, we see some gains also. Pat Fahey's in the lead in her race for the Capital District, and Angelo Santa Barbara is in the lead in Assembly District 111 against Paul DeLorenzo. So we'll keep giving you updates as they come because they will be coming faster as New York State begins to count their ballots. But that's where we are on the election pieces right now. So next up, folks, I want to just highlight a comment that came in from one of the folks who were watching on live. Sam Greeny had a comment. She said, do you think the Working Families Party will meet the new third party threshold in a presidential election? Jess, I want to throw that to you.
It's hard to tell. We did the work, we did the organizing. I think we're going to win it. And the exciting part to me is, so Andrew Cuomo stuck this new thing in the state budget that upped the party threshold that is making WFP need to get more votes than it normally would in a presidential year, not just a gubernatorial year. But after our primary victories in June, the WFP is just surging, right? We're electing candidates against centrist Democrats in the Democratic primary earlier this year. And that wave just pushed right into the general election where we wouldn't have normally done such a huge campaign to get party votes on the line in a presidential, but it made a ton of sense because people in New York, many of which were for Bernie, many of which were for Elizabeth Warren, hello, wanted that alternative, right? They wanted to vote for Joe Biden, but they wanted to send a message. And WFP was the way to send that message. Voting for Joe Biden and Harris on the line today sent the message that we don't want party politics as usual, Democratic Party politics as usual. We want a progressive stronghold on the Democrats, right? And so I think people are coming out voting for WFP with energy and excitement. And we are using this as an opportunity to build the Working Families Party, a strong third party. And it's happening all across the country, right? WFP under new leadership, nationally under Maurice Mitchell. You're going to hear from Sharon later tonight, I think, on this show, the deputy director of WFP in New York. And the energy is just growing for the WFP. I don't think Andrew Cuomo saw that coming. But after the primary wins and now heading into a huge Vote WFP campaign, I think we're looking good. We're looking strong. We are more well-known than we've ever been before in New York State. And it's because we aren't willing to accept Democratic Party politics as usual. And so I think we're looking good.
Thank you so much. Just one more question for you. You've been a Citizen Action for about 10 plus years now, right?
15.
15. Oh, pardon me. Let me lower my voice when I talk to you. So, Jess, you are obviously also a very proud member of the Working Families Party, as am I. What does the party mean to you? Selena's a first-time WFP voter. She voted straight down the line. And it wasn't because of me. It was because of the organizing that folks in the party did. So what does the party mean to you?
What does the party mean to me? Really just what I said. Like, if we just let the Democrats be Democrats, they're going to be bought off by the money. They're going to run to the right, as they have in over the course of the last few decades done. And the WFP pulls them back to the issues that actually matter to working people, right? And non-working people. Really deep investments in our communities, taxing the rich so they are actually paying what they owe. They've extracted wealth from our communities. It's about taking it back and investing in our communities that have been totally ignored for decades, for centuries, right? Black and brown communities, our school system, housing, public housing, everything. And it means increasing our democracy and breaking it open for all people. It's one of the slogans of the WFP is a New York for the many, not the few. And it really is about all of us together building a racial working class party that keeps the Democrats in check, because Lord knows they need it. And we've done that well in New York, but I think actually we're just getting started, and we're about to get more popular, more powerful, and really make some magic happen in 2021 in the state legislative session. That's where I wore my tax the rich button. We're going to need to do it, whether Washington bails us out and get some money for COVID relief or not. New York has been ignoring our communities for too long. We need deep, deep investments, and we know where to get the cash. And the Working Families Party has played and will continue to play a central role. And the people who make it up it really is about the volunteers, the first-time voters, and everybody together using our joint power to make it happen.
Jess, thank you so much. Do you have any last or final words to give the voters before we let you go to enjoy your family time?
Just keep organize, right? No matter what happens, it's our job to agitate and organize. Whether the Democrats get in at any level, whether, God forbid, the Republicans take some seats too, no matter what, our job is to push the edge of the possible, right? And to transform our society. And I believe deeply, if we are committed to organizing in solidarity with each other, we can make magic happen and create the world we want to see and live in together.
Thank you so much for that, Jess. Thank you so much. That was great. So, folks, once again, thank you, Jessica Wisniewski, for joining us for that conversation. That was fun. Selena, what did you think about that?
Yeah, no, that was good. I think Jessica definitely hit the nail on the head.
There we go.
When she was talking about the Working Families Party and just like how meaningful it is, and how we definitely need to hold the Democratic Party accountable. And that's why it was so important for me to become a first-time voter of the Working Families Party. And also, I encourage also some of my friends who did it for the first time as well, because I definitely think that this is a coalition that is more for the people, and I feel like mostly aligned with. And like to the point that she made earlier about, Joe Biden was not my first choice whatsoever, but it was the Democratic establishment that picked him and really, moved him to the top because, for whatever reasons. But I think, even though I did not want to vote for him, I felt like I had to. But doing it on the Working Families Party line gave more substance for me when it came to the 2020 election.
No, I definitely hear that, Selena. And do you think you did the right thing with your vote for casting your vote for Joe Biden? Do you think it'll help out in the long run?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was that or Donald Trump. So, yeah, no, there was no, there wasn't, again, I think a lot of us who have these conversations about the two-party system, we always say like, oh, both parties, neither party is for us. And, I understand that sentiment. But again, with the Working Families Party, it does give a different option. It does send a message to the Democratic Party to let them know that we're progressive. We obviously lean to the left, and we're going to fight for those that have been historically marginalized, those type of voters and their interests.
Yeah, no, seriously, thank you so much for that, Selena. So I do want to give folks some quick election updates as we keep things going on. And if Jess, we want to interview Rosemary, but if you're still around and you want to hang around, feel free to join us. So I want to give folks a couple of federal race updates. In New York House District number 19, Antonio Delgado is currently down to Cal Van De Water, 55% to 42%, but have no fear, only 2% of reporting has been done so far. In New York House District 20, Paul Tonko was up by 10 points, 55% to Elizabeth Joy's 44% with 2% reporting. And with 0% reporting, Republican superstar Elise Stefanik is up against Cedric Cobb, 63% to 36%. At the state level, with 1% reporting, Neil Breslin lead is holding. In District 43, Daphne Jordan is beating Patrick Nelson at the moment. And of course, in the Assembly, Mary Beth Wilson up ahead of Joe Seaman in the 112th District. John McDonald is up against Republican Petros Papanikolas in the 108th District. And in the 113th District, we see that David Catalafimo is up 57% to 42% in 113th District. So it's still too close to see where all the races are going to go, but this is what we have so far. As soon as we have some updates for Summer Brooks race, we will let you know. If I didn't tell you before, Michelle Hentry is currently down 36% to 62% in the 4600 District, but only 3% of the votes have been reported in. So it's still very early in the game. So now I want to bring up our other co-executive director, Rosemary from the Lower East Side, also of Rochester, but now in Albany. But her official title is Rosemary Rivera, the co-executive director of Citizen Action of New York. And if Jessica's still on, we can bring her up there so you two can share the stage.
I'm eating.
Great. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me, Stanley. I'm really impressed on how you did all that pronunciation of all those tough names to say and managed it quite well.
You got to sound it out and try your best. So Rosemary, or Rocky, as I like to call you, you are from New York City. You're from the Lower East Side, but then you left Lower East Side. You went to Rochester, and now you're in Albany. So you've seen all parts of New York State. What does your knowledge and history of New York State tell you about these elections right now?
Well, I was recently playing around with Governor Cuomo's slogan about how New York tough we are, right? And I kept thinking about the fact that I'm kind of tired of being tough. I'm really tired of being the kind of tough that, got to make miracles happen every Thanksgiving because all New Yorkers are struggling at this point. I'm sick and tired of being that kind of tough. I want to be tough, but I also want to be wise. And the reality is that Governor Cuomo is playing us straight up. He's just playing us. He plays us when he says that he cares about us. And says that he cares about the kids in this state and across cities across New York State. And actually, he governs in a way that shows me that he doesn't care. So yeah, I want to be tough on that. That's basically it.
Rosemary, I have a question about that because we've seen Governor Cuomo's profile raise so much on a national level. I mean, there was so much talk that he was even going to run for vice president at one point during this year, that he may join. If Biden wins, he may join his cabinet. So I feel like as New Yorkers have a very different perspective of Governor Cuomo, but the rest of the nation has literally been singing his praises. Can you talk about just the stark difference that I guess the rest of the nation feels and country feels, as opposed to what you feel and the constituents and the people that you interact with feel about Governor Cuomo?
Yeah, that's a really good question. One of the things that I say is we've got a real bully and a clown in the White House, right? We're looking tonight to make sure that this man just leaves office in the federal government. But what happens when you got a bully? You get somebody else that's just as strong to fight that bully that's in the White House. And we, especially New Yorkers, we love a good fight, right? So we see these two battling it out. And of course, what do? We can't stand this man in the White House. We're cheering all the way for Governor Cuomo to really show just how bad and how messed up this man in the White House is. But at the same time, while he's doing that and he's portraying, and his rhetoric is very much a rhetoric that says all of the progressive things that we believe in, and we tap into that and we have faith in that. But if we watch closely, while he is saying things like, hey, there can be no value on human life and on healthcare, he was at the same time governing in a way that was about to cut healthcare across the state and shift that taxpayer cost onto counties who could not be able to afford it. While he is saying that every child matters, look at how he's been governing since he's been in office. And let's look at the way that he's been surrounding himself. Who is in the office with him? At the end of the day, the governor's office remains the last bastion for the Republican Party. That's where the staff is. And that's who's creating our budgets. And our budgets are our priorities. And we have got to tax the rich. And instead, Governor Cuomo consistently takes on a message of protecting the very people that put him into power and protects the rich rather than us. And that speaks volumes to me. And I think New Yorkers are pretty wise if they watch closely about how someone moves instead of what they say.
Absolutely.
So, Rosemary, this question is for the both of you. So you're co-executive directors. You are two folks who both started out as organizers and have been doing work through grassroots organizing all your lives. And now you're at the quote unquote top of the food pyramid, and it kind of removes you from the ground. So you're not able to knock on doors as much, not able to be on the ground as much. What are some of the ways that you want to make sure you're staying connected to communities and you're providing support to them?
Rosemary just got big.
Jess, do you want to take that?
I'll start by
No.
just
Go
saying
ahead.
I went door knocking. I mean, I went door knocking in Kingston the weekend before last, and knocked doors in Midtown Kingston, saw with my own eyes what I have seen been happening in our community, which is massive gentrification. Massive gentrification. I mean, people from Park Slope coming up and buying the houses that middle and working class Black and brown families have lived in for a long time in Midtown Kingston, and talking to the people, talking to the neighbors who are left, really, about what's going on. Talking to the moms whose kids are dealing with remote learning in the Kingston City School District and who are dealing with the inequity, right, around what's going on and what their kid needs versus what their kid is getting in our public school system, and about the issues that are impacting their everyday lives. And right here, I live outside of Kingston, but I'm talking to the moms in my kids' class, and they're talking about the same things, right? They're the issues that we're dealing with in our communities, even in different kinds of communities, are all the same set of issues around being able to afford a roof over your head and to be able to stay in the community that you want to live in, making sure your kid has a good education, right? These are like making sure you can afford and deal with healthcare in your life, especially in a time of pandemic. Like, these are just the issues that families everywhere deal with, that my family deals with. So I talk to people. That's how I stay in touch, Stanley. I talk to people and always keep, you're always an organizer when you're at Citizen Action, regardless of your title or the work you do every day. The work you do every day is organizing. You think about organizing, you do the organizing, you talk to people every day. And so even though I was an organizer many years ago, I still feel like an organizer today. And I'm grateful to be working hand in hand with the amazing staff and leadership team that we have on the Citizen Action boards and with our volunteers. Spending time with them, knocking on doors, keeps me grounded for sure.
I'll just add to that, since you asked us both. As an organizer, I think that the way that I described it was that I collected relationships. As an organizer, those relationships didn't end simply because I got a new position. Those relationships are still in existence. I'm still talking to people on the ground. Those relationships are even people that are part of the struggle, which is exactly where I come from, right? So you don't forget where you come from. You don't forget the people that are around you. You don't forget the realness of, you asked about, New York City and upstate. Well, I can tell you that poverty looks the same. It smells and it stinks the same, whether you were in New York City in the Lower East Side. I remember Delancey Street. When you got off on Delancey Street, it stunk to high heaven, right? On the train there. But if you go upstate New York, it smells the same. Poverty smells, when you have issues on the MTA, we got issues that I can't get a bus, in upstate New York. Transportation issues, they're alike. And parents' dreams for their children, whether you're in New York City or in Buffalo, New York, or wherever you are, they're the same. They want the best for their children. And that's important for us to remember, because there isn't anyone that I have talked to that has a dissimilar vision of what they want for their families, and they, a little bit better world is what they want to see.
Stanley, I think you're on mute.
That is 100% true. Sorry about that, folks. I was getting you some election results. So we have a change in tides. With 23% of the vote coming in Senate District 46, Michelle Hinchy is up 73.78% to Rich Amador's 23%. We still haven't gotten any election updates for Rochester, San Mabrook, but we will keep you folks posted as those results do come in.
Stanley, pick me. Can I say something about that?
Go ahead.
So SD 46 is such an important district to us. after the last census, they drew the new district lines that we still live in today until a few years from now, or we'll change them again. But they drew, the Senate Republicans were so afraid of losing the control of the majority in New York State government that they drew an additional Senate district in the New York State Senate district map. They drew SD 46. It's one of the most gerrymandered districts in the state. It includes gerrymandering is where you literally, the politicians draw the district that they're going to run in. They pick the voters instead of the voters picking them, right? It's how you draw district lines. And so they drew this district, SD 46, as an additional state Senate district so they could get another Republican in there. And so they redrew the district, and it stretches all the way up past Albany into like the way northern New York, all the way down to the city of Kingston. And we were like, we are not going to let them win this Senate seat. This was back in 2012, right? And so Citizen Action and AQE and WFP found Cece Katchik to run in the race as the Democrat Working Families Party person. And it turned out we worked our butts off. And Cece Katchik won that seat by 16 votes. It went all the way into January, opening up every single absentee ballot in the courts to see if it would count. 16 votes we won the seat by. It flipped the Senate to the Democrats. And then the IDC was formed. Jeff Klein and the whole crew broke off the Democratic Party and formed the Independent Democrats and coalition government with the Republicans because we flipped SD 46. And it was heartbreaking, right? Because we won the Senate majority and then we didn't win it because of the IDC. Fast forward to 2018 when the WFP total sweep took out tons of the IDC candidates. This is why Cuomo's mad at us, right? And we took the majority in the state Senate. Here we are 2 years later. Michelle Hinchy could take back Senate District 46. The people of the city of Kingston, Saugerties, and all the way up past Guilderland, up toward Albany, are going to finally have the representation they deserve with Michelle Hinchy in that Senate district. And it's going to add to that Senate Democratic supermajority with Working Families Party Democrats that you described before. So it's just super exciting to hear Michelle is doing well. And we're really hoping for a victory there tonight.
Yes, fingers crossed for Michelle Hinchy. Jess, thank you so much for that origin story. That's really cool. Thank you.
I couldn't help it.
No, that was great. That was really great. Now, speaking of election results, I want to let you guys know what's happening in Senate District 42. Jen Metzger, a Working Families Party candidate, endorsed candidate, is up 68.86% against Mike Martucci, who has 28.13% of the vote. In District 22, Andrew Gennardis, who was endorsed by Citizen Action and Working Families Party, is down by 2 points. He has 46.98% of the vote against Vito Bruno, who has 48.83% of the vote, with only 40% of the votes being counted. Rosemary, I want to throw it back to you, because if we get this supermajority, there's an opportunity to finally fully fund our public schools. What does that look like?
It means a 4-year phase-in. I think it means a phase-in and a fast phase-in is what I'm hoping for, to actually keep the promise that of the state to our children. Back in 2007, we won the Campaign for Fiscal Equity, which was a $7 billion win. You know, as well as I do, Stanley, that our kids, particularly Black and brown kids across the state of New York, have been historically underfunded. It is about time that our children get what they need in order to succeed. If we get the supermajority, that means, honestly, that we can tax the wealthy, and that we can override we would have a veto power in the legislature to override Governor Cuomo, who protects billionaires rather than our children. And that's really incredibly important. It diminishes some of the power of Governor Cuomo. And who knows if Governor Cuomo is going to get tapped to go to the federal government if Biden wins, tonight's election. If that happens, we may have to shift a little bit in terms of our strategy, but we certainly would have the wherewithal. I think this is a really important year to raise revenue, particularly for our children. It's about time. They need it. You just look at Rochester, where they lost over 600 educators in a city with 30,000 kids, 28,000 of them being Black and brown. That's insanity to me. To lose that many teachers, parents and students have been coming out and have been really creating a rallying cry and organizing all across that city, and saying, we're not getting what we need. Our kids are not getting what we need. And instead, Governor Cuomo's response once again was, you know what? Let me just cut a little bit more. Let me cut another 20% more. Let me figure out how I'm going to pay for our budget woes on the backs of our kids. And there's no one out there that can tell me, when it comes to your kids, you're not going to do everything for them.
Oh, Stanley, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much for that, Rosemary. I want to give folks a quick election update. So for the presidential election, as we speak, Joe Biden is currently up by 131 pledged delegates so far. So he seems to have a small lead over Donald Trump, who has about 71 votes. I just want to go to back to the page so I can give you guys a cleaner breakdown of that. He is projected to win states like Arizona and possibly Texas very narrowly. It's still too close to call, but it's looking very good for Joe Biden right now in those races. As far as what's happening on the other parts of the state, Michelle Hinchy's lead is holding strong at 75% against Richard Amador. We're looking over here at the 43rd Senate District. Patrick Nelson, the Democrat, is still losing to Daphne Jordan, 34% to 65%. But Neil Breslin is holding a commanding lead against David Ewell and Senate District 44 with 68% of the vote against David Ewell's 31%. So he's doing a really good job so far. I want to make sure you guys know what's happening in the 55th Senate District, so I will check that very soon, and I'll let you guys know. But until then, I'm going to throw to Selena.
Yeah, no, I know that we're going to be having a very special guest from the Working Families Party coming on, but I will say, like, you know, this is almost reminiscent, almost, of 2016, where it looked like, you know, the night started out looking so wonderful, but then slowly all of the states started to turn red. And I just remember I was actually at the Jacob Javits Center waiting for Hillary Clinton to give her a victory speech. And I waited there till about 1 a.m. And by the end of the night, people on the floor crying. So I just say, look, it's not over until it's over. And I don't think all the votes are going to be counted until I think November 10th is the last day. I don't know. So we'll have to, I mean, I'm happy now, but again, I'm just bracing myself. You know, and I also appreciate the conversations that we're having about, you know, not only, you know, nationally, but, you know, in New York State, because one of the things that I wanted to, you know, really ask is, like, where's all the funding going? I know that we do have a very special guest who will be joining me, so I'll actually wait and hold my question until Sharon is actually here with us.
Yeah, I'm excited to have her on. So let me just give a very brief introduction to the guest that we're having coming on.
Oh, yeah, sure.
She's somebody I work with. I know personally. I like her a lot. She's brilliant. She works fast. She is the best multitasker I have ever met. And she might have 2 or 3 burner phones. This is the big boss, the state deputy director of the New York State Families Party, Sharon Cromwell. Sharon, how are you today?
I'm good. How y'all doing?
Good. Nice to meet you, Sharon. I understand you also have a decade of experience working with community-based organizations, labor unions, and national nonprofit organizations to launch new programs, develop member leaders, and run state and local legislative and budget campaigns. So you've been doing a lot. You've been definitely dedicated to the work and community activism for a long time now. And, you know, we definitely want to dig into the Working Families Party. We've been talking about it all night. As I mentioned at the top of this show, I was a first-time voter. I have been converted thanks to folks like Stanley, and thanks to so many people who have been calling me and texting me. In fact, this young woman called me, like, I think last week, and was like, well, Selena, do you know your polling site? You can vote early, and I'll text it to you right now. And it was just like such a beautiful experience. And I was like, you guys are putting in so much work, but we know the 2020 election is it's crucial for the Working Families Party, especially here in New York. So let's just talk about, why the Working Families Party is so important and what is on the line for this election.
Thank you for that. And it's great to meet you, Selena. It's great to be on with y'all tonight. I'm trying to control the nervous energy that I have right now as we're waiting for results to come in. But yeah, no, I think there's no way to say this, but this election is historic. The stakes are high, and it's going to determine what happens in New York State, what happens in this country, what happens in this world moving forward, right? New York is not a battleground state when we think about what happens nationally, but the federal election has been very, very, very key for the New York Working Families Party. The Working Families Party is a political party. We are on the ballot, as folks know. Every time a New Yorker goes to vote, they see the Working Families Party on the line, and that's at risk, right? We're at risk of losing that ballot line this election. And so we had to mobilize as many New Yorkers as possible to vote on the Working Families Party line for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, so that we can continue to be a political party next year, the year afterwards, the year after that, and continue driving progressive change in New York State.
Sharon, what was it that changed that really put the Working Families Party, in jeopardy?
Yeah, so the law changed, right? Generally, political parties need 50,000 votes to stay on the ballot, 50,000 votes every 4 years to remain on the ballot. Governor Cuomo changed the law through this in the budget that just passed, and made it 130,000 votes or 2% of the total votes cast, whichever is greater, and that's every 2 years, presidential election years and gubernatorial election years. And this was the first year that we had to meet that threshold. It's no question, right, that when people start building progressive power to challenge the wealthy, to challenge corporations, to challenge landlords, to fight for everyday working people, to fight for housing, to fight for taxing the rich, to fight for immigrants' rights, to fight for workers' rights, that the powerful are going to fight us, right? That they're going to push back on us. And one way that we've experienced that in our movement is raising the threshold for us to be on the ballot. The Working Families Party is a people's party, right? It is a party that is fighting for everyday people. And that's why our ballot line is really important. That's why our party is important. And so we saw this challenge and we're like, you know what? We're going to organize. We know that we need to defeat Trump. Like, we are clear about that. We are clear about the issues. We know that New York needs so much more beyond Donald Trump, right? It was so much more beyond defeating Trump. It needs so much more to recover from COVID. It needed so much more before COVID and before the economic crisis. We need to combat growing income inequality. We need to combat ongoing criminal justice issues. We need to combat white supremacy and racial oppression that our state is experiencing. And so that we're going to use this moment right now to defeat Trump at once and to fight for so much more and to put our issues and our movement and bring that to the polls. And that's what we did through this campaign. And that's what's at stake in this election, right? And so that's why one thing that we're looking at is how many votes we're going to get on the Working Families Party line for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, because we know that when we're victorious, it means that our issues, our movement is going to be that much more powerful when we go into 2021.
Sharon, and another thing you mentioned was the law that changed. We know it was Governor Cuomo who changed this very recently and raised the threshold. Do you think that was intentional? And can you talk about that? And then also, has the Working Families Party ever considered partnering and working with Cuomo ever?
Look, I think was it intentional? Yes, right? The answer is yes, it was intentional. And we know, right, that Cuomo is one of the most powerful Democrats in the state. And we know that we center our politics on what our communities need. So we know that there are going to be challenges to us when we're powerful, when we're building power. And I think we're going to see a lot of results that come out of this election to show that progressives are the dominant political force in New York. And so we take that challenge and we're going to move on and we're going to build the power of our movement. Like, I think the question of us being in a tit for tat with the governor is not the dynamic that is what's most powerful for us, right? Like, we know that we need to tax the rich. We're clear about what our agenda is and what our communities need to thrive. We don't exist clearly as an oppositional party. We have a proactive agenda for how we're trying to transform New York into a state that works for the many. And I think petty politics is not how we're going to play that and how we're going to win. Right. And so the governor can come for us, can raise the threshold. And clearly what we're going to see is that our movement's strong and organized, and clear about the vision and what we're trying to fight and what we're fighting for in New York. So that's what's always going to guide the politics and what decisions we make, who we endorse, what races we invest in, what legislative fights that we take on is really what our communities need. And that's what stabilizes us, and that's what gives us power. And that's what makes me really optimistic about how what the results are going to be. And we look at what the votes on the Working Families Party line.
Absolutely.
Sharon, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. Thank you to the Working Families Party. I cast my vote. We did all we can do. All we can do is wait now, but rooting for the party, for you, and for Sochi and the whole team. Have a great night.
Thank you so much, Sharon.
All right, folks, I have some election updates for you. So last we checked, at the moment, Rachel May is winning a 3-person race with 68% of the vote in the 53rd Senate District. In the 55th Senate District with Samra Brooke, she is up 52% to 45%. But let's go there and give it a quick check right now to see if anything has changed. And it looks like nothing has changed. With about 50% of the vote in, she is up 52.53% to her opponents, Christopher Missick, 44.43%. In the 56th Senate District with Jeremy Cooney, the race is just as close, even though we do feel confident that Jeremy Cooney will be able to pull away. And right now, with 0% of the votes counted in, Jeremy Cooney has 0 votes, and so is Mike Barry. So see, I told you it was close. Anyways, moving on over, guys. Jen Metzger still has a pretty comfortable lead, and Leslie Danks Burke is in a very close race against Thomas O'Mara. They're both at about 48%. So it's super close. Make sure you keep on watching. Selena, it's 9:52 p.m. Election results are still pouring in. Things are getting close in Ohio. People are getting worried. Do you think Biden will have enough to pull it through tonight? Or are the results going to not be clear until November 10th?
I think it might not be clear until November 10th. I think that, before we, hopped on this show, it looked like Biden, was doing pretty well in Ohio. But from my understanding, it's the suburban neighborhoods that really determine who's going to win that state. It's a crucial state. Trump, did very well in those suburban neighborhoods on the outskirts of Ohio. And we know that, the Biden campaign has been campaigning very hard in Ohio specifically. I think, the states that I'm really watching is like Ohio and Florida at this point, because we know that they are really crucial when it comes to determining the presidential outcome. And as I said at the top of the show, I think that even if Biden was to win those crucial states and win Pennsylvania, the Trump campaign, the Trump administration has said that they will put up a fight. They are willing to take this to attorneys, to the law, even up to the Supreme Court, which is why he pushed Amy Coney Barrett through the Senate so rapidly, because he wants the Supreme Court to determine who wins. He does not want democracy. He does not want your vote and voice to be counted. That is not what Donald Trump is about. He's only about himself and winning. But of course, you know that.
Yeah. And as we speak, Donald Trump is up by 2 points in Ohio, 50% to Joe Biden's 48%. We're still waiting to see what happens with the rest of those results. Fingers crossed that Joe Biden is able to pull through in Ohio, because as we know, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and a few of those other states are very important, and we need to win those if Joe Biden has a chance of winning the election.
Right.
As far as the congressional level, Antonio Delgado has pulled closer. He is now at 42% to Kyle Van De Water's 55%, with only 8% of the vote coming in. Paul Tomko in District 20 has pulled ahead. He is up 51% to Elizabeth Joy's 48%, and Elizabeth Stefanik in Congressional District 21 is up 68% to Tetra Cobb's 31%. Michelle Henchy is leading Rich Amador still with a healthy lead, and Neil Breslin in Senate District 44 is still leading 65% to 34% as we speak. A lot of results are still coming in. Some of them are coming in slower than we would like, but we will make sure we get them to you as soon as we can. As for me, I was hoping that we can get Florida and Ohio tonight and make this a quick thing, a quick knockout. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that we're going to have to wait, and we're not going to find out the final results for a couple of days. We've just found out that Kellyanne Conway said that Donald Trump will be speaking tonight. He will be addressing the country. I'm suspecting that he will probably try and say that he's won the race, which is what George Bush did in the year 2000, even though it was very clear that the race had not been decided yet. These next couple of days are going to be very interesting, folks. If Biden can't get a clear victory tonight, there's going to be a lot of things happening, and we have to be prepared to resist, stay vigilant, and count every single vote. Selena?
Yeah, no, I wanted to chime in because a lot of places are prepared. In New York State, a number of storefronts boarded up their windows. We know that, people houses in certain neighborhoods will also be are weary of what could happen on Election Day. We know that the president has put a fence around the entire White House once again. Basically, I feel like the country is on the verge of a civil war. It almost feels out. There's going to be chaos in the streets. There are going to be people who are very upset no matter who wins or tries to steal the election. And I think that we definitely need to brace ourselves. And, like I said, in 2016, we started off very optimistic, and then it slowly grew very dark and gloomy. And I feel like something like that could happen very well here. Another question I wanted to ask, Stanley, is something that we talked about a lot on BeHeard Talk, which is the presence and the prevalence of the Black vote. Do you think that we know that the Black voters have been a stronghold for the Democratic Party? We pushed Barack Obama into victory 2008 and 2012 by coming out in record-breaking numbers. What's your feelings about the Black vote in particular, 2020?
I think the Black vote is going to be very strong this year. I think that Black communities particularly have suffered very deeply from the Trump administration, and we understand what is at stake here, and we are ready to push back on this administration. If you're paying attention to some of these races, we have seen record turnout in some of these states. In Georgia, we have seen record turnout from Black voters. And while Biden is pretty far behind in Georgia right now, we expect for him to pull closer. Right now in Georgia, it's 55.9% for Trump, opposed to Joe Biden's 43%. But we fully expect him to pull in closer because so many folks have turned out to vote, and we still haven't even gotten all the absentee ballots just yet. But the most important thing that we can do is stay vigilant and make sure that we are counting all of the votes, because this election will not be won overnight, and it will not be won by punditry. It will only be won by the people on the ground voting. And I know we have to start wrapping up soon, so I just want to give folks one nice slice of the rainbow. As we speak, Joe Biden has a 5-point lead on Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. As folks know, we lost Pennsylvania last time. We lost that vote. It doesn't look like that's going to happen again. And we've seen that even though Joe Biden isn't doing that great in Georgia, he's making major inroads in those communities. He's also doing that in Texas, and Arizona is expected to be close as well. We have been doing the work, and the work is showing. So folks, stay confident, stay vigilant, take a deep breath. Relax your jaw, unclench your jaw on your shoulders, drink some water, and be prepared for the long haul. We got to fight, and we got to count every vote. Protect the vote. And for those of you who want to be more involved, we have a Protect the Vote rally happening on November 4th. You can get the information on our social media accounts. And we also have a Protect the Vote rally happening on November 7th. You can be involved in as well. Selena, any final thoughts?
Absolutely. And I just want to say that as many of us that voted early for the first time, that mailed in ballots, that stood in line and ran to the polls on Election Day, it's literally just one step in this fight. No matter who wins the White House, the next 4 years is going to be determined by us making our voices heard. How do we do that? By continuing to protest, continuing to petition, and continuing to keep the pressure up on our elected officials. The saying goes, all politics are local. We need to make sure that we are speaking and in contact with our community leaders, elected officials in the House and in the Senate, and make sure that no matter who is in the White House, we are still pushing legislation that will represent our communities and help us at this time of need. So I would just say we're in this for the long haul. Obviously, fingers crossed, prayers up for Joe Biden. But no matter what, we have to stay vigilant about keeping the political pressure on whoever it is that is elected.
That's right, Selena. So, folks, once again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for all of you folks who watch this show from beginning to end. Thank you to Rosemary, Jess, and Sharon for being our guests, and the entire communications team and the admin team at Citizen Action for helping us to put this show together. Thank you to the organizers and our amazing staff and leaders who've been in the comments. We appreciate you. If you enjoyed this, please sign up to become a member of Citizen Action of New York if you have not already. And also, please sign up to listen to BeHeard Talk. We have a podcast. You can get it on any place you get your podcast from, BeHeard Talk. And of course, citizenactionny.org is how you become a member.